Hey, what's up guys? Threat Level Midnight here, and today I want to talk to you about the Springfield M1A and kind of my journey with the gun and the evolutions that it's gone through for me, kind of some frustrations that I've had and maybe some remedies to fix it for you if you've kind of experienced the same thing. So let's get into it. So as it sits right now, this is how I have my M1A built. It's not anything special. It's just in a GI fiberglass stock. I threw some Krylon on it, but I did a few things to it to make it worth my while here. I bought this gun 11 years ago, and playing Call of Duty, I wanted the EBR, so I had purchased just a standard walnut version of it and dropped it into the Sage EBR chassis immediately. I never even fired it with the walnut stock on it, so I had no idea how it grouped, what it was capable of. But what I did find out is after I dropped it in the Sage EBR, I put a Gen 4 Springfield mount on it and a Vortex Viper PST scope on it. That's Gen 1 way before the Gen 2s came out. But the thing was holding, 4-inch groups, and it was really frustrating because I had a $900 chassis on a $1,600 rifle, and it just wasn't performing. And that was really frustrating to me. So, over time, what I did was develop some loads for the gun and settled on a Hornady 155 boat tail hollow point, a match load. And that tightened it up quite a bit. It went from about 4 inches to 2.5 inches. And 2.5 is still pretty rough. Back when I used to chew tobacco, we used to just throw out like Copenhagen cans and see if you could shoot the can, at 100 when you're zeroing, and say, hey, if you can shoot that Copenhagen can, with a semi-auto gas gun, like you're all right. But this thing would even miss, part of the time. So recently I was like, you know what? It's not even worth having the glass on it. The Sage EBR chassis is super heavy, and I want to go a different direction with the gun since it's not worth lugging around. And what really made me think about that was I went to my brother's ranch up in Northern California. He's got a large hog problem up there, and I ended up missing a shot on a hog at like 175 yards. And for a number of factors, shooting a load that I wasn't accustomed to, a gun that was inherently inaccurate as it was, and on top of it, the trigger on the standard GI model, it was gritty, it was stiff, it was just kind of unpleasant to shoot. So I didn't know what to think about it after that. So I was like, you know what? I went to Numeric Gun Parts. I found like this old fiberglass stock. They're like 35 bucks on there. The sling swivels were all rusted out, so I put some rust preventative on there and some rust remover and cleaned it all up and threw a coat of paint on it, and decided maybe I'll just go kind of the Black Hawk Down direction, throw a red dot on there, and see if it's worthwhile. But then I started watching a channel, Gun Blue 940. If you guys haven't seen it, the guy does awesome videos. They're long. I could listen to the guy talk for hours, but he does a whole series on the M1A and specifically the standard walnut as compared to the loaded model or the national match. It's going to have different barrels, different triggers, and everything like that. And he was kind of on a quest the same way I am about finding out, how accurate can the standard walnut gun be, or the standard kind of GI model gun. So there's a handful of things that I did to this gun that didn't hardly cost anything at all. And full disclosure, I already shot this thing, so I know, how the story ends. But the things that I did to it didn't cost much at all. But the Sage EBR chassis, to me, it looked cool. It was straight out of Call of Duty, but it just wasn't giving me the performance I'm looking for. And I'll show you it right now so you can see what I'm talking about. So I ended up just Duracoating the thing tan. The Sage EBR chassis, really nice. It's bomb-proof, it's rock solid, it's milled out of a solid block of aluminum. I like the telescoping stock. I like that it has an adjustable cheek riser. It has everything that you want it to. You can put lights, lasers, everything on it. But I'll tell you what, with a wire stock and a gun with a 22-inch barrel, all the weight is front-loaded. So it's painful to lug around, especially if you throw a bipod on the gun as well, or if you throw a laser plus a bipod. The thing's just extraordinarily heavy. And if you're running a $900 chassis that weighs a zillion pounds, and again, I don't have numbers for you, but I'll tell you, it's heavy. It's heavy hiking with it, just trekking around with it. It was unpleasant to carry around. So you know, shooting 4-inch groups on top of it, I was like, what's the point? You know, why would I even do that? Now, I don't want to get rid of it because I'd like to put maybe like a SOCOM 16 in here. I think that'd be a better fit for it. A little shorter barreled gun would be pretty cool in here. But I needed to try something else. So, like I said, I watched a handful of videos by Gun Blue 940, and he went over how to accurize his M1A just in the walnut stock. So I ordered a fiberglass stock and started going through the process that he went through, and then shot some groups, and you know, there is absolutely a method to the madness. So I'll show you guys what I did. So first things first is I ended up just bedding the stock with JB Weld. Not a hard process to do. You just kind of, I used Kiwi shoe polish, covered up the receiver with Kiwi, and filled in all the gaps with plumber's putty. And just where your receiver sits into the stock, I removed a little material with a Dremel, and then put a bunch of JB Weld in there on both sides. You can kind of see it right here, and it put a nice little shelf here and here, filled in any gaps right there. And then I just electrical taped the receiver to the action for about a day, and then pulled it out, cleaned up any excess that was there. And that was phase one with this thing. And then phase two, you know, put a coat of paint on it because it was just an old GI fiberglass stock that was surplused. So I just painted it real quick. And then while the JB Weld was setting, what I did was I ended up pulling the trigger pack apart here. And there's plenty of videos out there that show you how to do that. But what I ended up doing, I'll show you here, was just polishing up like your sear and your contact points between the hammer on these little spurs right here and your sear and disconnector. So once those polished up, when I dropped this trigger back in the gun, it was so much more smooth than it was before. It was actually pleasant to shoot, and it didn't have as much creep, and it wasn't gritty. It kind of took all that problem away, which was awesome for me. And then the last thing I did, we'll see if we can show you here. You can see the little shiny portion in there. I ended up shimming the gas system out, and so you have the gas cylinder here and your gas cylinder lock. You know, if you run this gun from the factory, when you tighten the gas cylinder lock down, you can usually swing it, you know, almost a half turn past where you need to put your gas plug in. So what this little shim system does, it gives you like 6 or 7 different shims, shim it out, and then it makes the whole gas system tighter. And you know, I don't know how much truth there is to it because I did all these things at once, but when you shim this gas system out, it's supposed to tighten up your accuracy a little bit and just kind of keep these moving parts a little bit more cinched down. All right, so now that we went over how I modified this thing, which again, you know, JB Weld, the tube of JB Weld is like $7. The shim kit was $9. Even if you didn't have the stock on Numeric gun parts, the stock was like $35, and the handguard, the upper handguard, was $15. So you're not invested very much money. So if you have problems with your rifle, it's certainly worth a try. I ended up loading a handful of hand loads. I had 147 grain full metal jacket, 150 grain power point, like a Winchester power point, 150 grain power shock, 155 grain Hornady boat tail hollow point match load, 168 grain AMAX, which was the Hornady TAP. That one was factory. I didn't hand load that one. And then I had 168 grain Sierra Match King, 178 grain ELD Match, and 180 grain Power Shock. Another, you know, a heavier hunting load for a 30 cal bullet. So let's go see the range review, and you'll see how it shot, and then we'll go over the results. Okay, just to recap what we have, we're going to start with the 147 full metal jacket, and go to a 150 power point, and then to a 150 power shock, a 155 Hornady match, 168 AMAX, 168 Sierra Match King, a 178 ELD match, and a 180 grain power shock. So we got a pretty good variety here today. All right, so here's the target setup today. It's a 5-inch circle and a like a shoot and see 3-inch stick up. We're gonna start with the 147 full metal jacket. Yeah, right there. That's a safe spot. Okay, pal, I'm going to get ready to shoot. You stand like right there. shoot 5 shots at a time. You ready?
Yeah.
It's gonna be a little noisy, okay?
Good job.
Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome.
Okay, so right away, 147, that's a pretty darn good group, and there's a reason I'm shooting a 5-round string here for little guys like that, but for just a full metal jacket, no load right there, that's pretty darn good. Okay, so next on the list is the 150 PowerPoint. I was really impressed with the 147 full metal jacket. It's more of a hunting load here, so I don't know what to expect out of these, but we'll give them a shot. Okay, so for the 150 PowerPoint, that's actually better than I expected. So again, I'll throw this to my own incompetence using iron sights, but you have a nice group of 3 here, one a little low that I felt I pulled low too. So even with a hunting projectile, it's looking pretty good. Okay, so next on the list is that 150 Power Shock. You probably won't notice too much difference from the PowerPoint, just a little bit different bullet construction. Okay, so a lot of this is on me here. I know I pulled this first shot, and then I have 2 separate groups, and that's a me problem, not a load problem. I would say that this group isn't so much of an indictment of the Power Shock as it is of just me not shooting very consistent. Okay, so I apologize for the Power Shock group, but now we're moving on to the 155, the Hornady match. It's just a boat tail hollow point here. I have high hopes for this one. This is the load that I had worked up for this gun in the past, so we'll see. Okay, so the 155 Hornady boat tail hollow point match didn't perform too well. Obviously that one's just me, but this group is just kind of all over the place, and personally I would consider it the poorest group of the day, even worse than the last one, because at least on that 150 Power Shock I had a separate group on this side and on this side, but this just looks pretty poor right here. All right, so next on the list is going to be 168 AMAX, and this is actually going to be the only factory loads to Hornady TAP. The rest are going to be hand loads using IMR 4064 powder, but not sure what powder Hornady's got running through this one. All right, ready, pal?
Yeah.
Okay, 168 AMAX, and if I'm being completely honest, I felt pretty unstable shooting this string, and I'm pretty sure that's reflected here. The main string of 3 is, you know, inside that 3-inch block that pushed a couple of them low. I also ran out of those little 5-inch circles, so I have a B8, and that bigger area of black is probably throwing me off just a little bit too. All right, next up is the 168 Sierra Match King. Personally, I have the highest hopes for these because I have the most of them left over. 168s, the AMAX, the last string I felt a little unstable, but I'll try to tighten this one up. Okay, I felt pretty good with the Match Kings, and I think it showed right here. I pushed one a little bit low, but this main group here is pretty darn good with iron, so I'll take that. All right, so next on the list is the 178 ELD Match. I use this projectile for a bolt gun load out of a Savage 110, and that gun shoots super tight, so we'll see what it does out of M1A. Okay, here's the 178, and yeah, not great. There's one off the left edge here, but this just didn't really group for me at all, and I felt pretty good taking those shots there. Okay, last on the list is the 180 grain Power Shock. The 178 performed pretty poorly, and I felt real stable shooting that string, so we'll see how the 180s do. Okay, that 180 grain Power Shock actually did better than I thought it was going to do. If I have 2 groups like that, I said it before, but that's usually a me problem where maybe I pushed that front blade of the sight to the center of the target instead of 6 o'clock like I was holding. So I could say if you did some work with these, they probably tighten up quite a bit, but they perform pretty well for what they are. All right, so personally, I think the results that you saw at the range kind of spoke for themselves. The gun can shoot tight. The gun is very capable. Even without a scope on it, I was able to hold what I would consider phenomenal groups using iron sights at 100. These targets are quite small, so when I go back and look at these results, you know, I'm still impressed by them. The 147 really set the tone for the day. To shoot a group this tight, and of course I'm going to have flyers, they happen, especially shooting iron sights. But to shoot, you know, a group maybe 1.5 inches or less was just phenomenal. So the 147, great performer. I had a feeling that the lighter bullets were going to perform pretty well, and they absolutely did. Then we moved on to the 150 PowerPoint. The group had it a little bit higher, but again, you know, you're looking at an extreme spread right here. If you discount each flyer out of there, you're looking at like 2 inches tops with iron sights. So I'll take that any day of the week. I was really interested to see how like the hunting projectiles, the flat base bullets perform. You know, they're seated at different depths than I would seat any of my regular, like my full metal jacket or my match loads. They're seated a little bit further down, but the 150 PowerPoint still performed quite well. The 150 Power Shock, although you might not see it in the picture here, I think it would have done well had I been more stable and had I, focused a little bit better, because I have a group of 2 here and a group of to right here, which tells me that, hey, I shifted my point of aim from here to here in between shots, and then I have a flyer over here. But I think if I was a little bit more stable, I could put those together and it would shoot just as tight as the 150 PowerPoint, maybe even the 147. So then we moved on to the 155, and that was the load that I had developed for this gun when it was in that Sage EBR chassis, and brought it to about 2.5-inch groups. And it still delivered about the same performance, and maybe it would tighten up. I'm going to do a little bit more testing on it because I loaded a bunch of them, and I'm going to have to shoot them out. But just not particularly tight. I had one flyer out of the group. It's under 3 inches, but not as tight as the rest, not as tight as even a hunting projectile, which is interesting to me. I thought these were going to hold a lot tighter, kind of closer to like how the 147 performed. But they just weren't there. So I'll do a little bit more testing with these, especially because I worked that load already, and see how it does. And then from there we went to the only factory load of the day. And I'll tell you, in my experience with the 168, the TAP with the AMAX, I've run it out of a bolt gun before, and it performed pretty much like this out of a bolt gun. I mean, shooting 3, 4, 5-inch group with it. I don't know. It's never been a good performer for me. So when I see him this spread out, there's no grouping anywhere. I know when I was out there shooting it, I felt a little unstable, but you know, every other group till this point has been better than this. So this was kind of like, at this point in the day, this was the worst one. And I guess that wasn't a total shock for me when I shot it out there. It's like, yeah, I've kind of expected these results from that load. And then I went to the 168 Sierra Match King. I just got a run of like factory second bullets that were on sale on Midway USA, and I was like, hey, you know what? I'm shooting them out of an M1A. I'll sling them out of there, and even if they don't shoot that tight, I'm shooting irons or a red dot anyway, so who cares? But these guys performed really well. So you have your initial grouping right here in the center. You have one that's low and one that's a little bit high, so extreme spread right here, right around 2 inches, maybe a little bit less. But I was really impressed with the Sierra Match Kings, and I'm glad that I ended up buying a bunch of them when they were on sale, because they performed quite well. So I'm going to develop this one a lot more and put a scope on this gun and see how tight I can get it. And then we moved on to the 178, the Hornady ELD match. I love the 178 load. For a bolt gun that I have, the thing shoots, you know, half-minute groups all day long. This is a load that I developed for it. But out of the M1A, just wasn't there. I have, you know, maybe 2 here. I got a spread here, and that 5th shot was even off to the side. And when I was out at the range, when I was shooting this string, I felt really stable too, and that was a problem where I was like, hey, every time those shots broke, I was like, hey, these are going to be good shots, and you know, and they just weren't, which was kind of disappointing. You know, but again, you know, I didn't think that the heavier loads were going to perform so well in this gun anyways. And then we moved on to the last one of the day, which was the 180 Power Shock. And again, just like the 150 Power Shock, I think I just kind of botched both groups on the Power Shock, where I have a nice group of 2 right here and a decent group of 3 right here. So when I see that again, it's like I'm probably putting my front sight at 6 o'clock, which is where I wanted it each time, and then I probably favored a little bit more towards the center red for these other 2 shots. But I would say, just looking at how they group together, like, hey, this would be a good load too. So there is a little bit of pickiness in this gun, but overall, I thought it performed really well. So when you're considering, you know, shooting the thing with iron sights just in a fiberglass stock, you know, with, you know, $30 worth of work put into it, I thought it performed extremely well. None of the groups were really bigger than 3 inches at all, and if you can shoot under 3 inches with iron sights at 100, hey, I'll take that. I'll take that any day of the week. And I don't know, maybe there's some guys that are better with irons out there. I don't shoot a ton of irons on my rifles. Pistols, I'm irons all the way because I have to be. So at the end of the day, I really thought this gun was it was a shooter. I'll tell you what, if you can run 8 different loads out of it and not shoot a group bigger than 3 inches throughout the course of the day with irons, I think that's pretty good. So I was really impressed by it. I was impressed more so by its performance in a fiberglass stock than the Sage chassis. And that's not, again, I don't want to bash on the Sage chassis, and I'm sure there's a bunch of you guys out there that are like, hey, I have my gun in a Sage EBR chassis and it shoots tight. It's great. It's the best. And I'm sure it is. But for me, it just wasn't working. With this gun and that chassis, it just wasn't working at all. So, like I say, smoothing out the trigger a little bit, adding a little bedding to the stock, and then shimming the gas system really seemed to tighten it up for me. And then now I have a few loads that I'd like to just kind of continue to work with. So I think in this next video that I put out, I'll throw a scope back on this thing and just see how tight we can shoot with this gun. I like how it feels. You know, I like the classic look of the M1A or M14, whatever. And now it's nice and lightweight. I love that it's just light again. And for the first time in a long time, I really had a good time shooting the thing, even with irons. I just had fun shooting it. And when before, you know, when it was in the EBR chassis, I had such high expectations for it that when I wasn't holding tight groups, it was just really disappointing, and I really started to kind of despise the gun. And that's not how it should be. You know, you should be out there having fun and appreciating what you got. So, and you know, in its current configuration, I like it a lot. A lot of fun to shoot. And you know, as it turns out, the standard model of M1A can be extraordinarily accurate if you just put a little bit of work into it. And again, some of you guys might have these guns that are right out of the box that shoot super tight, and if you do, that's great. For me, it was real loose, but now I finally got it dialed in, and hopefully this can help you guys when you're maybe selecting loads or figuring out what to do with your guns. These little things that didn't cost much really helped me out and really made me appreciate this gun a lot more. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.